The government is looking at relaxing COVID-19-linked restrictions in states that are reporting lower numbers of new infections. According to State Newswire Bernama, Home Affairs Minister Datuk Sri Hamzah Zainuddin said a study will be conducted on new daily statistics nationwide to identify the states that should be granted a measure of flexibility. He said he will discuss the matter with Senior Minister Security Cluster Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri Yaakob via the National Security Council Technical Committee, and the people can expect an announcement tomorrow. Malaysia reported 6,982 new COVID-19 cases today, some 41% of which, or 2,907, came from Selangor. Kuala Lumpur was today's second highest contributor with 637 cases, followed by Negeri Sembilan 606 and Johor 517. The other states still recorded three-digit new cases, except for Putrajaya and Terengganu with double digits, and Perlis, which did not report a single infection. In total, Malaysia has recorded 765,949 COVID-19 cases, 66,084 of whom are still battling the infection. 905 are in ICUs, with half on respiratory support. There were 73 deaths today, taking the death toll to 5,327. Local manufacturers are appealing to the government to immediately move on to Phase 2 of the National Recovery Plan to prevent permanent and irreversible damage to their business and the economy. In a statement, Federation of Malaysian Manufacturers President Tan Sri Saw Tian Lai said the sector is already severely impacted by business closures of the non-essential sectors and reduced capacity of operations of the essential sectors. He called on Putrajaya to review the three thresholds of the recovery plan to expedite a transition to Phase 2. According to Saw, the recent announcement of the indefinite extension of Phase 1 has sent most industries into a greater level of panic and anxiety on the future of their business viability. Citing Bloomberg's COVID resilience ranking, which showed Malaysia at 51st position out of 53 economies globally, he said the study pointed out that the speed of vaccination is key to economies in moving back to normalization. He argued that the government should focus on mass testing and inoculating more people instead of reducing cases. Otherwise, he said, waiting for new daily infections to drop to below 4,000 will effectively kill the manufacturing industry. Genetec Technology's share price hits a new peak after jumping 3 ringgit or 29.9% to 13 ringgit and 2 cents as investors weighed the automation specialist's prospects against the growing global demand for electric vehicles. This gives it a market value of about 655.4 million ringgit. Genetec's share price exceeded 10 ringgit for the first time on Wednesday. It has climbed to current levels in just a year from 1 ringgit 35 on July 2nd, 2020. At a glance, the current surge started since late May 2021, when the stock closed at 3 ringgit 69 on May 28th. On June 17th, 2021, Genetec said in a Bursa filing that the company had secured new orders worth about 47.9 million ringgit from existing customers who are global players in the electric vehicle and battery and hard disk drive, electronics and semiconductor industries. Investors who monitor Genetec's corporate updates would have also noticed that its largest shareholder, Chen Kai-Vun, had in recent days raised his holding in the company to a combined direct and indirect stake of 18.16%. Investors could have also taken their cues from CGS CIMB Securities' recent report that spoke of Genetec's confidence in benefiting from growing demand for electric vehicles worldwide. Serba Dinamik Holdings' largest shareholder and Group MD, Datuk Dr. Muhammad Abdul Karim Abdullah, has been forced to trim his stake in the company again this week. In a bourse filing, he announced that he had disposed of 61.71 million shares on Tuesday, citing forced selling. The latest disposal leaves him with 896.05 million shares, which translates into a 24.16% stake in the company. Prior to being forced to sell 46.3 million shares on Monday, Abdul Karim held 1 billion shares in Serba Dinamik. That is equivalent to a 27% stake in the company. On Wednesday, the EPF announced that it had ceased to be a substantial shareholder of Serba Dinamik after selling a block of 96 million shares on the open market last Friday. A back-of-the-envelope calculation shows that this leaves the pension fund with 185.08 million Serba Dinamik shares, or just under 5% of the group. On June 1st, Corp also ceased to be a substantial shareholder of the company after disposing of 26.03 million shares to reduce its stake to 4.53% from 5.24% previously. Serba Dinamik rose 1.3% to close at 38.5 sen for a market value of 1.42 billion ringgit. The Ministry of Finance says the government has received the first payment from AMMB Holdings of 1.8 billion ringgit, which forms part of the 2.83 billion ringgit settlement related to 1MDB. In a statement today, the ministry said the amount has been deposited into Malaysia's Assets Recovery Trust account. The remaining sum will be settled by AmBank into tranches of 515 million ringgit each this coming December and next July. The trust has received a total of 18.176 billion ringgit of funds seized, returned or for settlements in connection with 1MDB, with the funds used or to be used to settle its outstanding debts. According to Finance Minister Tengku Datuk Sri Zafrul Abdul Aziz, the government has repaid 12.54 billion ringgit of 1MDB's debt and 3.8 billion ringgit of SRC International's debt to date. As at the end of last month, the outstanding debt amounted to 39.66 billion ringgit for 1MDB and 1.85 billion ringgit for SRC. The current balance of the trust account is just enough to pay off the principal and interest of 1MDB's debt for 2021 and 2022. Once the funds are used up, Putrajaya will continue to bear the obligation to pay the balance of 1MDB's debts, whose issuance were backed by government guarantees and a letter of support.